runners pushing through the pain today to reach that ultimate goal, crossing the finish line on Boylston Street. Boy, you can just see it all right there. Cold, wet, windy, running 26.2 miles, already a challenge. Throw in these conditions and it becomes so much more difficult.
And hypothermia has been the biggest concern of this day. Dr. Mallika Marshall has been at a very busy medical tent here on Boylston Street throughout the day. Let's check in with her and see how things are going now. Mallika?
Hi, David. Hi, Lisa. How you doing? We are wet and cold down here, so I cannot even imagine running a marathon in these conditions. And that's what the organizers were prepared for once they heard the forecast earlier this week. So they had about 1,800 volunteers all along the route and here at the main medical tent. They also have a smaller medical tent. They actually borrowed some hotel rooms in order to treat patients. And while things were sort of slow in the beginning, they ramped up rather quickly when those sheets of cold rain were hitting the runners, and they filled up pretty quickly. They said one of their biggest challenges was trying to move patients in and out quickly enough to accommodate runners who were coming in. So it sort of peaked, and now it is slowly winding down. The good news is most people are doing just fine. There were dozens of transfers to area local hospitals like Newton Wellesley and St. Elizabeth's along the route, but less than 10 people have had to be transferred to Boston area hospitals, sort of the larger medical centers. And that's great news. That was not expected. They thought that people were possibly going to be sicker than that. There were quite a few runners, they said, who just kind of called it quits along the route, but the runners who actually made it here to the finish line, some of them needed to be treated, some of them moved on and warmed up on their own. There were lots of broth. They had broth they were giving to runners in the tent. There were bear huggers and warm fans. We were sort of taking coverage in there a little bit because it was so cold. So not unexpected. Generally, the runners are doing fine, but it was a very cold and wet one.
Wow, that's incredible. Only 10 having to go to hospitals. That's great news. Doctor, very quickly, as a doctor, what would you recommend to people who have tight, sore muscles and who feel achy later?
I'm sorry, Lisa, but you're talking to me?
Yep, just a quick question for you. You're our doctor,
Yeah.
so for people who've run this race, thousands of them are going to be awfully stiff and sore. What would you recommend for recovery?
So what they said was that people need to not sort of dawdle, that they need to immediately get to shelter and warm up, even the runners who came across looking quite well, and rest. I mean, they're still dealing with the other things that runners who run marathons contend with, and that's blisters and sore muscles and dehydration. So hydrate, rest, and lots of TLC, and most of these runners are going to be just fine.
All right, Mallika Marshall, thank you so much, live outside of the medical tent. Now